So hi, in this video I'll show you how to a basic template, a basic RAG template. It will be a question answer template. So we'll ask a question and the LLM will give us the answer based on the data that we will supply it. So basically how are we gonna go about that? First of all, what is RAG? RAG is retrieval augmented generation. Okay, so all right, there are three components of RAG. So we all know is that we have the query that we pass to the application, and then we have our own data over which we want our query to be run, and then we want the response from the LLM. Now usually what happens, so this comes from the LLM, response from LLM. Now usually what happens is that LLM are trained on, these are all general purpose LLMs. They are not aware of our own data. So how do we make them aware of our own data? So one way is that what we do is that we pass our data with with every question that we ask, we pass a whole chunk of data to the LLM. But sometimes our data might run into thousands of tokens, millions, not thousands, but millions of billions of tokens. And LLMs have a window which is very limited. So in that case, what we do is that we only supply the relevant parts of the data, to this general purpose LLM, and this relevant part of the data augmented with query to generate the response. But how do we find this relevant part of the data based on our query? That is the most important thing. So our whole data is converted to vectors. Converted. But these vectors, basically, it's encoded into vectors based on the meaning and not on any other factor, just based on the meaning. So what is done is that this conversion to vectors is done using embedding model. And then when we pass on a query, what that query does is that the embedding model, the same embedding model, converts this query to vector space, and it what it does is that from this data, since it's also in the form of vector space, based on certain functions or certain similarities, the vectors that are close nearby to based on certain similarity functions, basically the vectors that are close to this query are retrieved, and the retrieved data plus your query is then passed on to general purpose LLM, which finally gives us the response. So this is what RAG basically is. And what LlamaIndex does is that it's a framework. LlamaIndex is a framework that makes this process easy. So we don't have to start from scratch. We already have a framework and we utilize the functions present in the LlamaIndex to do our own stuff. So that's what basically we are going to do today. Index has embedding model. By default, it's OpenAI's, and LLM is also by default OpenAI's. But we want to change that. We'll use the HuggingFace OpenAI embedding model, and for LLM we'll use Gemini, one of the models from the Gemini family by Google. So I've already created the API key and it's already present in .env file. Now let's just create a Python notebook, Jupyter notebook. I'm going to name it q and a.i by notebook. So let's get started. First of all, I'm going to load the environment variable from .env. Okay, I'm going to import load _.env. So we are going to import OS, then we are going to do load.env, then we are going to store our API key in this variable, and we're going to do os.get, and we can just copy or paste this stuff from anywhere. And I have named my API key Gemini API key. So we'll be able to load our API key. Yes, we are able to do so, I think. And then we'll do certain important imports, because you see, by default it's OpenAI for embedding model and also for LLM, but we have to change the default setting. So for that thing, we have to do certain imports. Import settings. Uh, Let me see. We'll go to the LlamaIndex docs. I'll share the link of this doc in the description. But basically, we have to do this import. First of all, we have to run this. I've also already installed this. Then we have to do this import. So this is what we're going to import. Okay. So we'll be able to import the model, and we'll also be able to import the settings class. Next, what we have to do, we just have to do settings.embed model. We have to change the embedding model, and that is, so embed model, we have to change it to Hugging. We have to keep set it to HuggingFace embedding. So that is what is happening here. Mm, So this will happen, and then we have to change the LLM model. For changing the LLM model, we again have to do the same thing. Basically, we have to run this pip install LlamaIndex LLMs dash Gemini. So I've already done that, and then we have to do this import. So I'm doing all the imports here. So okay, so this is done. Now we just have to change the embedding model. Settings dot LLM is equal to, so we just copy and paste stuff from here. Mm, mm, let's see. We'll change the model Gemini. So we'll be using Gemini.1.5 dash Pro, and the API key I've already stored in the variable API underscore key. So this will change our default embedding model as well from LlamaIndex.core import. We're gonna import document. We're going to import vector story index. We're going to import simple directory data. So okay, now the documents is equal to simple directory reader, and we have to specify the directory from which we are going to import our data, and we are going to apply a function of load data on it. So this will help us to load the data, and it will store it in the data structure. It will store it in it will be in the form of a certain data structure, and we'll store it in documents. And then we have to generate an index. So our data has already been loaded. Now that loaded data has to be converted into vector using the embedding model. So that is what we'll do here. So using vector store index, what we'll do is that we'll use from underscore documents. We have to convert the document. Okay, so vector store index, this function, what it will basically do is that convert all our data to in the form of vector space using this function. So our document is here, and it will generate an index, and this index will point to that vector, that data structure, that vector store space. So as our indexed, next what we have to do is that we have to create a query engine. Query underscore engine is equal to index, which we got from here. as query engine, because we are going to do a question answering thing over it, right? As query engine. So yeah, the next thing, so we simply gonna ask some of the questions. Response is equal to query engine dot query. So query will be what is author's idea of success, and we'll bring the response here, right? Okay, so this is various other templates, various potential comments. If the question gets sold about money, standing for one's will. It's basically the correct answer, fulfilling familial expectations, finding the right partner, practicing empathy and withholding judgment, or achieving inner and outer peace. The author seems to be that success is a complex concept, possibly encompassing combination of these elements. So basically, this is the right answer. So the article talked about success and some other thing. So it is the right answer. So this is the template that you can follow, and this is how you can change the default embedding model to Hugging Face or any other. And here you can use the Gemini model instead of the OpenAI default model which is present there. So I've used Gemini dash 1.4 dash Pro. You can use any other model. For example, they have used um, they are using a different model here for Gemini. So they are using Gemini Ultra. I was using Gemini 1.5 dash Pro. So you are free to choose any of the models from here. So there's also Hugging Face model. I did not use that. There are a lot of models. Llama. These are all open source models. Llama is an open source model, basically. So yeah.